is the transit class. So we're understanding a little bit of our natal chart through the lens of the transit. But most of what I'm talking about is the transit. So there's in the sky right now, where are these planets in relation to the constellations, which are represented by and representative of each of the signs? That has its own energy attached to it. When you add in that transit and layer it onto your natal chart, you can get more details that are specific to you. Then when you look at just your natal chart, you can get a different interpretation, and all three of those can work with each other. So that's why if you have your, I know we talked about this before, so I'm trying to remember in the chat. So you had Jupiter in the 9th house, then that means that one interpretation is, if I'm understanding my Jupiter in the 9th house, what does that mean? That means my entire lifetime. Where am I being asked to grow and have luck and learn? But the layer out is, well, this specific transit, it's going through my 8th house. What does that mean for my year ahead, which is separate from my entire life? And then you have, what does it mean for the collective? So hopefully that's helpful, me breaking it down like that. And all three can happen at the same time, which is why it's very complicated. So in these classes, I mostly try to focus on, I kind of touch on all of them actually, but I try to spend the bulk of each of the transits just like conceptually, what's the transit? And then what is it for you? And then if people want to go deeper, then they're explaining, oh, well, I also have this natal transit here. So that's like the third layer deep. So sometimes I do hit on that, which I have in today's class. But normally I try to hit the first two, because some people, especially if they're more beginner, then it's like, okay, I don't even understand like that deepest layer. And then how do I understand all three of them happening at the same time? It is kind of a lot. So that's why being able to break it down in kind of a simple way, have examples. That's why I spent that time walking through that long example for Jupiter going from Gemini, spending all that time in Gemini and what that means for me versus what it could mean for me in Cancer, but I don't quite know yet because I haven't lived it. But I can start to look back at Gemini and contextualize it and then think, well, so what does it mean for the collective? What does it mean for my chart? What does it mean based on my chart? So I didn't even say, where's my natal Jupiter? Mine's in Scorpio. Okay, that's a whole other thing I can layer on. If in my whole life I'm supposed to be learning about 5th house, as some other people were in the chat, and understanding Scorpio, that's a separate mission that's happening your entire life. And then this is happening over 1 year. And it will happen again, and will happen again, and it's already happened before. So you have these 1 year slices of growth. And then also you have 1 year slices of growth for everybody. What does this look like big picture across the globe? So yeah, hopefully that is helpful to explain. I would say of, what has more of an impact. For the collective, it depends on what the thing is. Where if you think, oh, well, that has a huge impact, that had more of an impact than it did on me as an individual, that's up to your discretion, your judgment. Your natal placement, I always think that is very, very important. But I have also very much experienced that these transits, so this is a transit lasting a whole year. That is kind of a long time. It pales in comparison to Pluto, which we talked about in the fall, changed signs in November, and it's going to be in that sign of Aquarius for 20 years. So that is a huge chapter. 20 years is a long time. So Jupiter feels like a blip. But as we're living our lives in our day-to-day, 1 year is a long time. It just depends on how we approach planning our long term and how we experience time, what for you as an individual might feel more important. Now, your natal chart is talking about your entire lifetime, and none of us know exactly how long we're going to live. So that likely for most of the people on this call is longer than Pluto will be in Aquarius, 20 years. So if most of us on this call are more than 20 years old, then relative to how old we are, that Pluto transit feels smaller. So we're kind of almost getting into like a quantum physics thing of what is time and how are things connected. So yes, okay, I'm glad that was helpful. Depends on what you want to learn. I would say the basics are understanding your big three. So that's what I would recommend for anyone as their starting point. And then what I do for my reading, so I branch out from there, but I like people to look at their nodes. So it's their purpose, what they're called to release, Chiron, what are wounds and things to be healed in this lifetime. So it just, but that's because I'm someone who likes to focus on growth and learning and bigger picture soul work and personal development and evolution. And for some people, their focus is not necessarily that they don't want to grow, but maybe their focus is, I want to understand how to connect to others more. I want to understand how to experience more joy. I want to understand my health, my relationships. So we can have different angles. And so then I think if you have your basic starting point as your big three, then whatever you are most interested in, pivoting towards that, figuring out the pieces that are most relevant. And we can spend an entire lifetime looking at our own charts, understanding it just from the flat static natal chart version or the transit version, which is what we're doing today. We're layering, we're superimposing other things on top of the natal chart. And on and on and on. And there's so many things you can do. So it's always up to the learner, the student, that's you, about where you want to take it. But I think for basics, big three to start, so you can understand part of your sense of self. And then if you want to work on healing, okay, let me understand my Chiron. If you want to learn about your growth, look at Jupiter, look at Saturn, lessons, responsibilities in your lifetime. So you could just work through each of the planets one at a time. You can do them in sequence. You could do them based on the topic that you're interested in, or you could focus on sign and say, well, I would just want to go through zodiacal order. So I'll just start with Aries, whether or not I have anything in Aries. I want to understand that. So you could go through by tackling the wheel. You could go through by tackling each of the planets, or you can go through by subject matter. So I know that was a lot of options, but I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think it's really dependent upon the person. But yeah, so for anyone who wants help in understanding their natal chart, obviously I already have readings available on this. I do these classes. I typically am doing an astrology class once a week, not always, but most weeks I am doing some sort of astrology class. In this week, I'm technically doing two. But one of the services that I'm going to be rolling out is doing actually a mentorship in this space. So working with people so that they can understand their chart in the context of upcoming transits. And so I can kind of give you like, oh, here's like a little, homework assignment or something. Here's a thing that you can study and work on and we can talk about. So I can kind of educate, but also give you opportunities to start practicing it and learning some of it in the context of your chart. So I decided to do the mentorship for my services for my business is because I've had so many students say, do you do a mentorship? Do you work with people one-on-one? And I'm like, I probably should just do that because I think it would be really fun and I would enjoy it and I would get a lot out of it too. Because we can do a lot of things in this class and in this space and container, but some of it's limited. Like we could do more if we were like actually together, virtually together, looking at things and in more of like a working session.